think?
It's beautiful.
Nice spot, huh? So, you notice there were two waterfalls. They start 175 meters apart. They meet at the bottom. The one on the left is the tallest waterfall in Central America, as far as we've been able to see. That's what the owner claimed, and we've researched and haven't found anything taller. The one on the right is 25 meters lower, so it's almost as tall. And there's another one on the other side of the valley that we don't yet have locked up, but probably will. I'm negotiating now, which is just a little bit lower than the one on the right. And there's about 13 more waterfalls in this area. So let me back up a little bit. I mean, what you're seeing here, virtually all the land you saw in this video is going to be nature preserve. And the idea is to preserve the land. And the reason for that, as I mentioned the other day, the environment is in serious trouble. We're losing, it's set up to 200 species a day. This is one of the, Megan says the 6th greatest mass extinction on the planet so far. And there are scientists who say it might actually be the largest ever, because if things continue at the rate they're going, in 40 years there will be no wildlife at the rate they're currently disappearing. I can't vouch for that fact, but that's what they're saying. And the bottom line is, the Amazon's on fire. They're burning it down to create pasture land, to create beef cattle. And this is completely unsustainable. If anyone here is still thinking they want to eat animal products, one of the things you want to realize is that it is the most destructive business to the environment, and the environment's in trouble. We can't afford to grow animals. You can't do it. It takes too much land, too much water, too much energy, too many resources in general, too much pollution, too much waste. We're destroying the planet as a result of trying to feed people a diet that our bodies were never intended for. And the bottom line is, we need forests to grow oxygen. I saw something recently that said the value of one tree it was some ridiculously huge figure. If we look at how it benefits the planet, if you try to put a dollar value on that. And so, much of the land you saw here is already forested. Unfortunately, it's not old-growth forest. It's not primary forest, because all of this land had been clear-cut for pasture. Like all the other Central American nations, Costa Rica believed 50 or 60 or 80 years ago that they were going to have their economic salvation be in the form of growing beef cattle for North America. Didn't work out very well. And so Costa Rica realized about 50 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, that they'd be better off regrowing the forests, and they've encouraged people to do that. There's still quite a bit of pasture in the valley. The valley is 8.5 kilometers from the waterfalls to a village at the other end, to a road. That 8.5 kilometers is pretty much, it's not pristine because, again, some of it's been cut. And there's a few dwellings and buildings, but there's not much in there. Actually, I have 1 or 2 employees who were actually born in that village, in that valley. There are 2 towns that no longer exist. They've completely disappeared, pretty much all traces of them. What happened was people, before there were roads up here only 25 years ago or so, people had to go out on horseback. And to get from the valley to town to pick up a sack of rice took like 8 hours on a horse. And so people felt so cut off when they put roads in, not there, but around. Everyone moved out of it, literally everyone moved out of the valley. So my goal is to preserve the entire valley. Now, this entire valley, we don't actually know exactly what it is. It's been hard to get the right numbers. But yeah, I'm guessing it's between 8,000 and 10,000 acres, which means maybe 3,000 or 4,000 hectares, something like that. Maybe a little more. And it's a tiny, it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what we need to do, to what the planet needs to do in terms of preserving land and forest in particular. But what occurs to me is that unless we can actually get people onto the land, interacting with it, enjoying it, I mean, you can look at this and see how spectacular this is. Imagine what happens when you're actually there, right? It's incredible. And we need people to feel that so they actually value the land. Because people have trouble valuing something that's intangible. And so when they're thinking, yeah, we need more oxygen, but I'm still breathing today, like they don't realize that there's a problem. What we want to do is actually get people onto the land, lots of people, and show them why this is important, teach them why we need trees and why we need to preserve the species. Okay, how we can live in harmony with nature, create healthy ecosystems that provide habitat for millions of species, and where we can also be happy and healthy, productive, and enjoy life. And so the project is multifold. The piece you saw, when this video was made over almost 3.5 years ago now, I just contracted for that piece of land where the waterfalls are. It's about 435 acres. I currently have about 1,800 acres under contract, so more than roughly 4 times that much. And I'm negotiating for many other pieces that are contiguous pieces of land. They touch most of them. Some of them might be separated by a road, but all in the same area. The idea is it's a multifaceted project that brings people to the land and hopefully keeps them there for at least several days. Not everyone, but in other words, there'll be people that want to stay. And so what we're doing is we're designing something, a project that people will want to visit and to hang out at. And there'll also be the community component. So we've been talking, especially in the evenings here, about creating, last night we were talking about creating a world that we actually want to live in, right? Where people are motivated by love, by taking care of each other, themselves first, each other, the planet, right? Not so much by profit, not so much by taking whatever they can get for themselves. Nothing wrong with wealth, but much more important, creating something that's sustainable and that provides a situation where everyone and every species can actually thrive. Because what we're doing to the planet now clearly doesn't work. Okay, so we need to approach this from a different direction. And that's the idea with the project. So when the video was shot 3.5 years ago, I was only looking at that one piece, that's all I had. And the project has grown quite a bit since then. Originally I thought we'd build a community inside the valley with views of the waterfalls, and I thought, that's kind of a shame. I'd like to develop in there. We are going to develop a little bit. There's going to be bathrooms. There's going to be, a place where people can get refreshments when they're in there. 'Cause it's big. It's going to be much bigger. There's probably going to be some cottages that people can rent, if they want to stay in the preserve itself. Okay? But the amount of development inside the preserve will be a fraction of a % of the land inside the valley. We have quite a bit of land that's also up around the valley. There were some shots where you might have seen up at the head, like at the top of the falls, there was some grassy, some pasture that looked relatively flat. It's not as flat as it might have looked like in those pictures. Some of it is, but at the top of the falls, at the head of the falls, we have 3 contiguous farms, which total 50 hectares, 125 acres. It's pasture. There's a few trees here and there, but nothing that's critically important, and it's mostly pasture. The owners all have cattle, dairy cattle in this area. Beef cattle are mostly in the north of this province. The goal is to reforest all of that, but it'll be a little different. Down below, that's nature preserve, and what that means is we don't bring in anything that's not native to the area, okay? But up above, what we're going to do is we're going to create a fruit farm, a permaculture-based fruit farm where we grow every species we can grow. And the goal is to create the largest collection of tropical fruit species in one place on the planet. Okay, do you know the Fruit and Spice Park?
Miami?
Homestead?
Yeah.
30-acre park. It was privately owned. It's now a state park. Because it's a state park, it's pretty inexpensive, 10 or 12 bucks, I think, to get in.
Zero.
No, you pay to get in. Yeah, I've been there several times, including last year. You still pay. And it's pretty cool, but frankly, they're not even, I mean, first of all, what we've got is 4 times bigger. Second of all, it's not tropical. There's a tropical microclimate, but they still can't grow all tropical trees there. There's some things they grow you wouldn't think would grow in Florida, but there are a lot of things that won't grow there. Okay? Here, we've got the ability to grow every variety of tropical fruit. We were talking just the other day. Okay, there's more than 5,000 varieties of mangoes. Okay? You know, there's so many more things than people are aware of. Imagine a place, we may not be able to get 5,000 varieties of mangoes, and they may not all grow here. They may require very specific climates that may not be what we have. But imagine if we had 300, 400, 500 varieties of mangoes, different varieties of mangoes. How cool would that be? How many people do you think would want to come see that? How many of you would want to come see that and get a chance to taste whatever was fruiting? Not interested? Eric, you are too. Okay, I think we'd see a lot of people coming for that. And I think we would see people, not only the tourists, I mean, tourism is Costa Rica's #1 industry. Okay, and tourists to Costa Rica are here primarily. They're not here for the cities. Cities aren't much to speak of. They're here for nature. We've got the highest waterfall in Central America and about 15 more waterfalls in the park. I don't think it's going to be too difficult to get tourists to come to this place if we market it properly. You agree? I don't think it'll be difficult at all. We happen to be in pretty good shape because we're at the southern end of the Gold Coast of Costa Rica. Okay, if you go to the closest beach and you go from there north to the Nicaraguan border, that's considered the Gold Coast. That's where most of the most expensive hotels and resorts in Costa Rica are located because it's the driest province. So if you're spending $300 to $3,000 a night to stay, you don't want it to rain all day. Okay? You want to go to the beach or play golf, you don't want rain. And that's why all these places are there. There's a lot of people coming to this province within an hour or two of here who have a lot of money to spend and they're looking for things to do. And we're going to have something that's completely unique. And I've only shared a little bit of it with you so far. But the place will be set up on permaculture principles, the farm. There will eventually be thousands and thousands of trees. We've got space there for between 40 and 50,000 fruiting plants. That's a lot. Okay? It's a big deal. There'll be, initially, I mean, it's going to take several years for that to grow. Once we start planning to have something that's worthy of paying to see, take at least 3 or 4 years, I suspect. But eventually there'll be maybe a 4-hour tour and a full-day tour, and there could be a 3-day tour. You know, for people that really want the nitty-gritty, they want to see everything. There might be something even like a week-long program where it's completely immersive and they see all of the trees and all the species and they taste whatever's there. They get a chance to actually see how we build swales and banana circles and other permaculture techniques in action. Maybe it includes green building, different options, etc. That's part of that project. There was one shot, it was easy to miss, where you could see a hill. Here's the top of the falls, and it was way back up here to the right. Pretty high, about 125 meters higher. Okay, that's 400 feet or so higher than the top of the falls. We have a piece up there that's about 17 acres, 7.5 hectares, gently rolling land. The goal there is to create a world-class botanical garden. Okay, I don't know about you, you can probably tell, but I love tropical plants. Okay, this doesn't happen so much here, but when I was in Panama, every time I left, I was there for 6 years, every time I left the center in my car, I'd come back with more plants. Okay, I'd stop at every place that sold plants and see if they had anything we didn't have yet. And we'd add new stuff. When people come here, I've got neighbors that want to bring, some of them that do bring their, like every time their families are visiting from the city, they call me and say, can I bring them over? They want to walk them around and show them what we've done here. And this place isn't open to the public. It's not, that doesn't work when we've got people fasting, right? But we're going to create something that's spectacular. I mean, really, the goal is to be top 20 botanical gardens in the world, with some time. It takes time to develop something like that. The site's amazing. We're on a peninsula here. This is the largest peninsula in Costa Rica, the Nicoya Peninsula. So if you go due west, the Pacific Ocean is maybe 20 miles as the crow flies. About 50 miles or so south. And to the east over here, if you walk out here, how many of you walked out on the road? You can see the Gulf of Nicoya and Punta Arenas, a city on the other side. Okay? So we're surrounded by water. It's a long way, but this site is high enough that you can actually see the water in 3 directions through the mountain peaks. It's pretty amazing. And there'll be a little boutique hotel sitting in the middle of that botanical garden with second floor rooms where everyone's got spectacular views, right, of the mountain ranges and the ocean beyond and down into the gardens. And for each of these 3 major attractions, everything will start in the same place. You'll pull into a parking lot, you'll get out of your car, and initially there'll be one building. Eventually there'll be a little village which will develop. And imagine a ski village, you know, picturesque little town with fountains and beautiful landscaping and small scale buildings, probably mostly 1- and 2-story buildings here, where there are shops and boutiques and places to eat, galleries. There'll be a whole section that will be for artisans. There are local artisans that have no showcase, no way to show their stuff. And we're going to make it something for them where they can inexpensively have a little place where they can work and sell their wares to the public. Okay? Now, obviously they can go into town right now and rent a shop. The problem is there's no tourists in Ojancha. There's no tourists in Nandayude. And looking at tourism in Costa Rica, okay, if we look at the #1 tourist attraction in Costa Rica, it's a national park, spectacular, called Manuel Antonio. And it's on the coast, on the ocean, maybe 3-4 hours south of here, near a town called Quepos, a city called Quepos. #2 tourist attraction is a place called Monte Verde. Anyone know it? Have you been there? No? Anyone been to Monte Verde? No? So Monte Verde means green mountain, and it is a cloud forest. So it's high enough that it's in the clouds pretty much all the time. When you think of Costa Rica, what do you think of?
Coffee.
Coffee?
Beaches.
Beaches, flip-flops, bathing suits, sunshine.
Rainforest.
You go to Monte Verde and you need shoes and socks and long pants and jackets, and some people have on hats and gloves. It's in the 50s there most of the time, 50s, 60s. It's damp and cool. And it's, people go there because there are many species that only exist in that environment, where it's high enough, where it's in the clouds, where it's that wet, right? They're not going to be found anywhere else, so people go there to see them. So whenever we're closed, we do, between sessions, we do a staff trip. We go to the beach half the time, just spend the day on the beach with the whole staff and their families. We'll rent a bus. But we went there once as a group, it's a couple hours from here. We've been to several other places. And we had the whole group there, and we're walking through, and you're looking for all these cool things, right? What do you think the animals do when they hear you coming?
Scatter.
Hide. Yeah. So the place is green and cool and damp, and unless you sit in one place for a long time, you don't really see that much. Okay? It's cool. It's nice. That's the #2 tourist attraction in Costa Rica. And it was built as a biological research station when an American bought the land 100 years ago. And then people said, well, I want to see what's going on there. And they started going there. And now it's #2 tourist attraction. Okay? They see nearly 500,000, 465,000 visitors last year. Something like that. I don't remember the exact number. I believe that what we're going to create here will be far more interesting to the average tourist once we put it all together. It's going to take some time to put it all together. But we've got, you know, again, imagine a nature preserve, and everything will be done beautifully, because that's the way I do things. Quality, beauty. There'll be nice trails, well-maintained trails. You know, right now, you want to go see all the falls. You've got to hold on to a hose and pull yourself up these places like this. I've brought people there who wouldn't go up, and it's a shame because it's spectacular. But they're like, no, it looks a little scary. Okay, we're going to create access, paths, walkways with handrails that are safe, so that anyone can get there. In fact, we'll have ramps that go around, so if someone's in a wheelchair, it'll still be accessible as much as possible. And with 15 or 16 waterfalls and everything we've got there, I don't think it's going to be too hard to bring a lot of people in. Okay? With the other attractions, other major attractions, it's just even more. They've got more reason. It's not just that, they can also see these other things, and there'll be much more. The idea is to create a bunch of things that attract people. How many of you like adventure sports? Anybody else? Rock climbing, mountain biking. So we're going to create the largest, maybe the only, mountain bike park in Central America. There's a piece of land at the other end of the valley. It's about 300 acres. We're going to create very cool trails there for mountain bikes. We'll haul people back and forth down through the valley. We're going to create, anybody here ever ride a quadricycle? I have one sitting out there. I love it. It's a lot of fun. But they're noisy and they pollute, right? It's a 500cc, mine's a 500cc motorcycle engine. So it's pretty loud. And what we're going to do is we're going to create paths along the valley floor for quadricycles, away from the falls for the most part, but there'll be a fleet of electric quadricycles charged by the sun. No noise, no pollution. We've got cliffs, I don't know if you can see in the film, but there are actually cliffs in the valley where they're close to the falls. There'll be rock climbing. There'll be bouldering and climbing walls for people that want to learn, and then there'll be real climbing and rappelling for people that are ready for that. There'll be a high adventure park. Anyone familiar with ropes courses? We'll build something like that there. Canopy tours. Back in May of 2018, I was at Whistler, which is the largest ski resort in North America, has the largest mountain bike park as well in North America. And there was a woman, I was there for an event, there was a woman there at the event, a 25-year-old or so from LA, who was really excited because their canopy tour there has 125 meters from the highest to the lowest point, which means there's some speed, right? I mean, some of them might have a 10 or 20 meter difference from the highest to the lowest point. This one was 125 meters. We've got about 450 meters, if I remember correctly, over 400 meters from the top of the botanical garden to the bottom of the waterfalls. We could do some pretty cool things with that. Okay, so there could be a whole bunch of different options. There'll be campgrounds, there'll be little cottages, there'll be a whole range of different price points for people, tourists that want to stay. For people, some of you, maybe you're never going to leave Wisconsin, but maybe you'd like to spend a month every year in a place like this. We're going to have an option where sitting on the edge, again, you can see some of those shots. You had the grassy area, and then it just sort of fell into the valley, right? There's these like cliffs. Right there on the edge, we're going to have, I'm not sure how many units, but there'll be units which will be fractional ownership, which means you can buy a month or 2 months or 6 months, and it's yours for life. Okay, it's a furnished unit. All you have to do is show up every year. Okay, whenever you want to come. I mean, as long as that time's available. Okay, there'll be options. So now, the way some of this developed, I mean, I've spent now more than 20 years traveling and speaking. I've had the chance to speak all over the world, and it's amazing. I love it. You know, big thing for me, I've been writing. I've written for many magazines. Big thing for me is getting the word out there, helping to educate people about how to eat optimally and how to cleanse and heal their body and how to function and how to create, how to manifest our highest potential. really, is what it comes down to. And this is just part of that. So for me, education's a big piece of it. And this gives us the chance to educate a lot of people. We believe that in 10 years, 500,000 visitors a year is completely realistic, given that Monteverde is doing that today. And we've got something which I think will be far more interesting to far more people. Okay, I believe. But the original impetus for this, the seed of this, was my desire to create an intentional community, a community where like-minded people can come and live in community and support each other in being their best, taking care of themselves. I mean, if you live in the US or in Europe, chances are good that most of the people around you would be happy to convince you to make the same crummy choices they make, because then they feel better. And here, we're creating something where the norm is to make excellent choices and take care of yourself. Okay? The intentional community, what happened was people would come to me and say, well, it sounds amazing, I'd love to be in community, but you've got a business here. How am I supposed to support myself? And so I started thinking about how to create something that worked for everyone. And the idea here, now think about the commercial village. Okay? Again, you could go to Ohancha today and rent a store. There's plenty of spaces available. Places go out of business all the time because there's a stable community with very few tourists and most people aren't buying a lot of stuff. They don't have a lot of money. You can go open your own business. I don't know how well you're going to do, but what if you had 500,000 people a year coming onto the site, looking for things to do and looking for places to spend their money? So someone's going to run all those shops and eateries and boutiques and galleries, etc. Someone's going to run a bike shop. Okay? Someone's going to run the quad business. Someone's going to run a yoga teacher training school and a yoga studio. Someone else is going to run a permaculture school and a green building school and perhaps a school for doulas. Okay? There's going to be a retreat center which somebody needs to be running. There's going to be tons of opportunities if you want to run a business where we're providing a flow of tourists to keep your business busy. Can't guarantee you're going to be a millionaire, but I can guarantee that you can create a nice life doing something you enjoy doing, whatever you want to do, in a spectacularly beautiful place with like-minded people. How does that sound? Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So the community I haven't really talked about yet. But the intentional community, that's the final piece. It was the first piece, it's the final piece today. And the idea there is, it's what's called a green condominium here in Costa Rica. So the condominium association owns the land, owns the common land. You own your lot, and you build your own house, and that's yours. You own it, okay? Now, intentional communities mean that people have to be vetted and approved. It's not open to anyone. This isn't a subdivision where anyone can buy their house. What typically happens with most intentional communities is if you want to join, you go and spend 2 or 3 months there, you rent a place to stay, and you spend 2 or 3 months living on site, interacting with the community members, and then they decide yes or no. And that's what will happen. Now, people I already know, right now, there's no community association because there's no community. There's a couple people who've already put some money up. And there are many more right now that are ready to do the same thing. They're just waiting to make sure that we actually have something we can give them. We will have title to 2 pieces of land within probably 2 or 3 months. One of them could be sooner. We're still exploring the ownership structures and what the best way to set this up is. There's a foundation in place that we've already set up. We should have the paperwork should be approved in the next few days. The foundation will be responsible for administering the preserve itself. But the other businesses I've mentioned are for-profit businesses. that allow the community to thrive, that allow the investors who put the money up to make this all happen, because the project, as I've outlined it to you so far, and there's pieces we haven't talked about, but what we've talked about so far, it's going to be about a $20 million total investment. And I've actually gotten most of that already covered. I'm only around 19.99999 million short. Okay? I got about $100. We're looking for investors who can help. If you're in a position to do that, you want to invest in something you believe in, there's going to be some pretty interesting returns. It'll take about 10 years. I mean, there'll be money before then, but it'll be about 10 years it gets pretty interesting. Okay? And if you know people, I mean, there are people out there who, I've actually had someone tell me on the phone the other day, he was introduced to me by a friend and client of mine who's in the finance business, and he hooked me up. We did a conference call, and his friend, who's a real estate investor, who's doing big projects, said, I don't care about returns. I mean, I'm not in it for the money. I've got all the money I need. I'm looking to invest in things I believe in. Okay, there are people like that. And he said, I'm interested. Awesome. Okay, we're working on finalizing the information that will go to investors. We don't have that ready yet. It's been a big project, and up until now, that's why Caroline's here to help me with that. Up until now, I've been doing most of this myself. But there's opportunities for investors, and there's opportunities for people that simply want to be part of the community. If you want to be part of the community, there's a couple of options. The first section of land we will likely have title to. We're waiting right now for the plan to be recorded. Right now it's undocumented. There's no problems with the process. There's no one arguing it. It just takes, in Costa Rica, everything takes a little time. So in 2 or 3 months that should be done, something like that. As soon as that's done, we get title to the property. And as soon as we get title to the property, we have an engineer come in and subdivide the lots, do it on paper, and then we do a legal subdivision of the lots under the green condominium laws. We put in the roads and utilities, and we start having lots available. Probably within a year, you could be building your home if you wanted to. And the idea is to build things that are environmentally sound. Right? So not giant places. I mean, some of you probably noticed, we're sitting on a giant patio here. Right? There's no walls over there. You could live on a floor, a roof, with little else if you wanted to. So I know people who live in completely open structures that way. If you want some security and maybe you don't want all the insects coming in, you might want some screens and some walls. That's up to you. But it doesn't take much. I've had many people say, just give me one, like something the size of one of your bungalows. I don't need anything more than that. Right? So it doesn't have to cost much to build. Now lots are going to run $50,000 each. And let me be clear, you can buy a small piece of land for much less than that in Costa Rica. What you're paying for is to be part of the community. Okay, there's many advantages to being in community. And what we're doing is we're using those funds to actually help make the nature preserve possible. Now because of that, the community association, the Green Condominium Association, will be a very small minority owner of the holding company. So the community will benefit as the whole project grows. Eventually, you might actually get a small check every year, just because you live there. I can't promise that. I mean, that's going to depend on the association and how they choose to use those funds. The first step is to make sure that the community property is maintained. There'll be a community structure where there's community meals a couple times a week. There'll be a library, there'll be a meditation center, there'll be a laundry center, there'll be a tool center. So you don't need these things yourself. As a community member, you have the right to use what's there. But the whole community has to pay for that. So this is how that gets paid for. Okay, and then eventually there'll be plenty of extra. Okay? You've got security. Here, Ticos are beautiful people, but there are many people, and there are many of them, I'm sure, completely honest, and we've seen that with people here. But if a foreigner builds a home here and leaves it completely unoccupied, people will break into it and steal things when they're not there, unless it's secured. And here we've got security of being in a community. Okay, it will be gated. Entrance will be very challenging for anyone that's not a member of the community, and that's what you need to do here. Okay, but you'll have, again, this is a community where you look out for each other, you take care of each other. The project, the community, will be intended to support everything that's good for the human soul and spirit. So we'll have an artist in residence program. There'll be an amphitheater, okay, where we'll have all kinds of musical, dance, other productions. I've been imagining a recording studio in the valley, one of the few things we do in the valley with views of the waterfalls. Imagine if you're a musician making your music while you've got a glass wall with views of these waterfalls. And part of the deal when you play, when you're there to record, is you play a concert at the amphitheater. Open to the public. So this is what we've been visioning, and if you're interested in this, you're welcome to come play with us, because this is going to be a co-creation of anyone that wants to be involved. Okay? The community will eventually be run by the community. Now, the community is one piece, and the rest of it is separate. The overlap is that the community will own a piece of the whole thing, a tiny piece of the whole thing, and community members will be the ones who have the option of having a business there, where we're bringing customers to you. Okay? Some cool things, by the way, none of which I plan on running. So a couple of these are already spoken for, although people speak up and no one's actually put anything up yet, but there'll be a juice bar. Now, some of you know I'm not a fan of juices. Why would we do that?
You're serving the public.
This is for tourists, right? What we're trying, I support raw vegan restaurants when I travel, because A, it's fun to go out and get served, which is not what I'm usually doing. I'm usually just grabbing a watermelon and a butcher knife and I'm done, that's it. Every once in a while it's nice to go out and get served. But I also appreciate those businesses because they're bringing a message to the public. You can eat food without cooking it. You can have delicious food that includes no animal products, no processed foods. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have things that cater to the tourists, because that's what this is for. We want the tourists who come on the site to go, damn, this was amazing. I'm coming back every year. That's what we're after. So there'll be a juice bar, and I've got clients, husband and wife team, that want to run it. We'll see if that happens. Anyone here ever had raw vegan chocolate? Some of it's pretty good. I've got a friend in the UK, he's actually from Holland, lives in the UK, makes some of the best raw vegan chocolate I've ever had, and I've had a lot of it from all over the world. I've tried it. His stuff is really, really good. And he has agreed to license his products and to come himself personally to teach somebody how to make them. Okay, so we'll have an existing brand. What we'll do is we won't just sell a few things, we'll have a whole chocolate shop which sells his products. But more than that, how many of you would be interested in seeing how you make chocolate? I think a lot of people would. There'll be a tree to bar tour. That's a $10 tour, whatever it is. Here's the cacao tree, here's how we harvest the fruit, this is what happens next, the whole process. Okay, and they end up in the shop where they'll take some stuff home with them, I promise you.
Chocolate covered mango?
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. How many of you had banana ice cream? Most of you have not had banana ice cream. So, if you weren't aware of this, you can take bananas, ripe bananas, not overripe. Overripe bananas, what can you do with those? Compost them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if they're overripe, you shouldn't eat them. But when they're really ripe, before they're too ripe, you peel them, You freeze them in a Ziploc bag, okay? And then you run them through a machine like the Champion juicer, in my opinion, is the best consistency. Comes out just like frozen custard. Years ago, I had a little booth at a health fair outside of Washington, D.C. $1 a cup. People would buy it and say, what's in this? Bananas. You know, duh, but what else? Cream, sugar, what? Bananas. That's all. Okay, it's amazing. And if you take, what I do is 50% banana, 50% mango. Mango, you need the bananas to make it creamy. Banana ice cream. 50% banana, 50% strawberries. It's amazing. Any flavor that's strong enough to overcome the banana, amazing. So if we've got thousands of varieties of fruit, imagine an ice cream shop where on any given day there's 30 or 40 different flavors of ice cream. And the ice cream is just fruit. Okay? I have yet to serve this to anyone who said, I don't like it. Everyone likes this stuff. Okay? Pretty cool. Right? There'll be a bunch of different restaurants. There'll be a Raw Vegan Culinary Institute. I've got an old friend who started the first that I know of, Raw Vegan Culinary Institute in California. It still exists. She sold it a couple years ago. She's now 71 or 72. She started over 20 years ago. It's called the Living Light Culinary Institute. Anyone heard of it? She spends half her year here on the peninsula, by the way, and half in California. And her stuff is great, and I'm sure she sold the school to a nonprofit. I'm sure they're doing a great job. There's a couple of issues. How many of you have been to a raw vegan restaurant, eating gourmet raw vegan food? How did you feel afterward? Not so good, right? A lot of the stuff that they use in these they still use salt and oils and stuff that's not really optimal. So we're going to create a Raw Vegan Culinary Institute where we don't use any of that stuff. Okay, it's actually healthy raw vegan food. Now, I have some experience with this because I used to teach prep classes. I catered a wedding for 150 people. Almost lost my personal assistant and my girlfriend. The three of us made all the food together. They both hated me by the end of the 3 days of prepping food. It's 15, 16 hours a day. We worked from 6 a.m. until midnight, 18 hours a day. We're going to create something that's amazing. And imagine now, you want to be a raw vegan chef. You can go to Northern California where it's kind of cold and damp much of the time, or you can go to Costa Rica. I think it's going to be a no-brainer. I mean, if you're like really tied to that school or those teachers, you'll go there. But if you're looking for a Raw Vegan Culinary Institute, and it could be wherever it is, don't you think the raw vegans would rather come to Costa Rica where there's 10,000 varieties of fruit and the highest waterfall in Central America and yoga classes every day and all the shops and things that they'd want to enjoy? I think they would. Okay, I think the same will be true for the yoga teachers and etc. There will be a retreat center. You know, we have our fruit festival coming up from March 1st to March 8th. It's amazing. You might want to consider coming before we're out of space. We're almost out of rooms now. If you want a room, you're going to want to book soon. Then we have tent spaces. Last year we had about 50 varieties of fruit here, 100% organic. Okay, yoga classes every day, a couple campfires, trip to the beach, lunch on the beach, trip to the waterfalls, lunch on the waterfalls. It's a great time. We've got a yoga retreat happening the week after that, and possibly another one, a different teacher happening the week after that.
What's the weather like at that time of year?
It's sunny every day, no rain. The sun's intense, but it's beautiful, blue skies. We're going to have a full-time retreat center that eventually can handle 4 or 5 different events at one time. All we need is 4 or 5 different teaching spaces, right, with the facilities. And then housing will be anywhere on site, which means when we do an event here, let's say the yoga retreat might cost $2 grand for the week, something like that. That covers room and board here, transportation. We provide that, and it pays the yoga teacher. Let's say the yoga teacher wants $1,000 for her work, okay? If we do this with this new project, we'll have a bunch of things going on most of the year. Let's say the teacher wants $1,000 a person. Or that, let's say it this way, that we sell the course for $1,000 per person. Some of that goes to the yoga teacher, and she pays for the space. And now each attendee decides if they want to spend $20 or $25 a night and sleep in a tent, or if they want to spend $1,000 a night and sleep in a luxury villa. When I say luxury, I mean an environmentally sound luxury villa. Right? Green everything. So we can attract a wider audience. We're not pricing people out of the course, and they can choose the level of comfort that they want. All right, so now there'll be a school, an amazing school, not just a school, an amazing school. A school that actually teaches children how to think and how to be healthy people. Not drones, not worker bees, but how to think for themselves and go create the life that they want.
I was thinking like a research center as well, for like students doing their thesis or something.
Absolutely, it's planned. Yeah, as well as a camp for children, which would be somewhere on the inside on the edge of the preserve. And what we would do with that is we would market it towards North Americans during the holiday times in North America in summers, to Europeans, but we would also make it available for schools, local schools, to bring classes of children and to spend a week on site. Okay, there'll be a lot of other adjuncts. One of the things that we hopefully will be able to do is to create a sanctuary for farm animals nearby. Okay, there's tons of possibilities, and if you have ideas, if there's something you love that would fit in, fantastic. Bring it to us. That can be your piece of it. Okay, there's tons of possibilities here. I mean, I guess the bigger picture, again, that I've alluded to without getting into much detail on, what we want to do is show people how to live on the planet in ways that aren't harmful. So everything we're doing will be done in the most environmentally sound way possible. And we'll show people, here's how to build a house that doesn't damage the environment. Here's how to generate power. Here's how to process your gray and black water from your home. Okay? Here's how to use land in ways that are actually regenerative instead of destructive. The permaculture piece. Are you familiar with permaculture? Because it comes from Australia originally. It's huge. The way we grow food today on this planet is harmful to the environment. And permaculture is regenerative. It creates, you build essentially an ecosystem. You take land that was trash, that was pasture, that's grassland, huge tracts of grass, and you convert it into forest, which benefits not just us because of the fruit, but it benefits thousands of species as well who now have habitat. We now recreate a healthy ecosystem. So they're huge benefits.